12 lakh and 25,000 Americans dead. Not in a foreign war, right here on American soil. This is the story of the 3 disasters that killed them. We talk about wars. We teach battles in schools. We build monuments to soldiers. But the 3 events that killed the most Americans in history were not fought with guns or bombs. One came on a breath of air. One came from brother turning against brother. And one came from the very earth beneath their feet crumbling away. A pandemic that moved in silence and killed 6,75,000 Americans before the government admitted it existed. A civil war that averaged 425 deaths every single day for 4 years straight. And a decade-long environmental catastrophe that destroyed 35 million acres and drove 2.5 million people from their homes. Today we rank the top 3 deadliest disasters in American history. By death toll, by human suffering, and by the permanent mark they left on this nation. Welcome to my channel, Historical Disasters USA. Stay until the end because the number 1 deadliest disaster on this list is not what most people expect. And the story of how it was hidden from the American public is one of the most shocking things you will ever hear. Number 3. The Dust Bowl, 1930 to 1939. The sky turned black at noon. The land itself had died, and millions of Americans watched everything they had ever known simply blow away. When the rains stopped in late 1931, there was nothing left to hold the earth in place. Decades of overplowing had destroyed the deep-rooted grasses of the Great Plains. The only thing that had anchored the topsoil for centuries. What came next was unlike anything America had ever seen. Massive walls of black dust, called black blizzards, rose hundreds of feet into the air, racing across the plains at 100 miles per hour. They turned day into night. They buried houses to the rooftops. They suffocated livestock where they stood. In 1935, a single dust storm carried 1 billion tons of topsoil of the Great Plains, blanketing cities as far away as Washington, D.C. Scientists calculated it would take 1,000 years to replace that soil naturally. By the 1934, 35 million acres of farmland had been rendered completely useless. Another 125 million acres, 3/4 the size of Texas, was rapidly disappearing. Dust phenomena overwhelmed hospitals and killed thousands, especially children. Oklahoma alone lost 4,40,000 people to migration. They were called Okies, a word that became synonymous with desperation and the collapse of the American dream. They did not lose their homes to fire or flood. They watched the earth beneath their feet. The land their parents had built their lives on simply disappeared into the sky. The Dust Bowl did not just destroy crops, it destroyed communities, identities, and the belief that the land would always provide. It was a disaster born from human greed and ignorance, and nature's response was 10 years of darkness. Number 2. The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Brother against brother, father against son, one nation torn in two. April 12, 1861. A cannon fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina, and the United States of America went to war with itself. What followed was 4 years of bloodshed so catastrophic that it still stands as the deadliest conflict in American history. The Civil War was not just fought on battlefields. Disease, starvation, and imprisonment killed as many soldiers as bullets did. Men with nowhere to retreat, no antibiotics, and no hope simply endured until they could not. At Antietam, September 17, 1862, over 23,000 men became casualties in a single day. It remains the bloodiest single day in American military history. For over 110 years, historians counted 62,000 dead. The modern census data revealed the true toll closer to 75,000. Adjusted to today's population, that is the equivalent of 7 million Americans. In the Confederacy, the death rate was staggering. Nearly 13% of all military-age men. The South lost an entire generation. Farms were abandoned. Families were destroyed. And through it all, 425 Americans died every single day for 4 years straight. The ground did not just swallow soldiers. It swallowed a generation. America was reborn through the Civil War. But the price of that rebirth was written in the blood of nearly 750,000 of its own people. Number 1. The Spanish Flu, 1918 to 1919. It did not come with cannons or bombs. It came in silence on a single breath. And it would become the deadliest catastrophe in American history. In the spring of 1918, while America's soldiers were fighting in the muddy trenches of World War I, an invisible enemy was already spreading inside their own barracks in Haskell County, Kansas. The world called it the Spanish flu, but it belonged to no country. It belonged to death. Within months, the virus circled the entire globe. Governments censored news of it to protect wartime morale. So the world did not even know the true scale of what was happening. People dropped dead on street corners. Entire families were wiped out overnight. In Philadelphia, one of the hardest hit cities, nearly 1,000 people were dying every single day at the peak. The city morgue, built to hold 36 bodies, was overwhelmed by 500 at a time. Coffin makers could not keep up with demand. Of the US soldiers who died in Europe, half of them fell not to the enemy, but to the influenza virus. By the time the three waves were over in 1919, the Spanish flu had infected 500 million people, one-third of the entire world population. And it claimed more American lives than every war the United States had ever fought combined. They called it the Spanish flu, but it was born in America. It spread in silence, and it ended more American lives than any war ever fought. The world has never forgotten and never should. Three disasters, three different phases of destruction, a plague that moved in silence, a war that turned Americans against each other, a decade when the earth itself fought back. But through every catastrophe, America endured, not because it was untouchable, but because its people refused to be broken.